Good morning, everyone, and welcome to American Scouser's Morning Coffee or Tea with American Scouser. Morning Coffee. And yes, Grumpy is back in full force over here. He had only one Monday off and he's back in action. And Matush is with us with
This
his.
one says hell because we've gone through hell.
These are the Monday mugs now, and that's
Ugh.
how we have to roll. Alan is with us. Good morning, Alan. It's just yeah, what a difference a week makes. So I guess the biggest question is going to be, I mean, we'll talk a little bit about the game and save the rest probably for the
Ugh.
podcast, but a little bit has to be talked about where is this is this on Klopp and the players when they can. I mean, I saw like a crazy stat, and I couldn't find it this morning about how we always lose to. I think BJ had it
Yeah,
in
I
terms of
can
like, yeah,
I
pull,
can
pull
pull it
that guy
up.
up because I mean, it's fucking nuts how bad we are
Let me.
against like
Yeah,
the players, like teams that start against us as the 20th or something crazy. Let's find that real quick. I couldn't find it online, and I know like BJ had it
yeah.
for. There we go.
A reminder that under Jurgen Klopp, Liverpool have lost more Premier League games against sides starting the day in the relegation zone than teams starting the day in the Champions League places.
I mean, that is freaking crazy.
It's
That
not
is
good.
just a crazy stats.
It's not good at all. I don't know if it's partly um, player naivety going into matches, thinking, "Yep, this side is not good, so we should take care of them," and then they don't show up for the game. I don't know if it's a Klopp thing where he doesn't prepare as much for these sides as he does for the top four sides. Um, I think maybe given that we know that he hasn't really rotated players so much in his career, maybe these are the types of games that need more rotation, that need players who want to play and who don't take the teams for granted. I wouldn't have been if we would have seen the likes of Custis play over the weekend. I'm not saying Robertson played poorly, but all in all, if you have a few guys out there that typically don't get to play and they're more amped, they're more up for the game than the guys who are coming off a very emotional 7-0 win. It's just I thought we would have seen some rotation.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't expect it. I didn't even want it, and I think I almost feel like if we had zero rotation and Henderson back out there, it would have probably been better if we started with Henderson. And nothing against Basetic, and I think he's gonna be a great player once he builds the size. But I mean, we keep saying it as we watch the game for one, and two. I mean, he's not going to grow on the 30th minute suddenly. So, I mean, these are games that we kind of have to win. I kind of expected us to go all out on this one. And then whatever happens in the Real Madrid game happens. Like whoever is available plays then. If they make it happen, they make it happen. I mean, when we beat Barcelona 4-0, we didn't have Mo, we didn't have Bobby.
Right.
Whoever could play, played. I guess my bigger concern is like just the mindset thing. I mean, this has to be a mindset thing. If we're able to go out and play, and here's one thing I understand, United obviously plays into our hands a bit more than Bournemouth would. But this was not one of those games where we constantly dominated. Bournemouth was just like parked, especially in the first half until they scored. Yeah, they pulled back a bit more after they scored. But it wasn't a game where it's just like, they parked and we just could not open them up or anything like that. It was just bad energy wise and like the desire wise. It's night and day with the United game.
Yeah, and we've seen that over the course of the year too. Players just not giving everything during the game. And that's been your biggest criticism. That's been my biggest criticism. A lot of fans' biggest criticisms of the team is that we don't care if they lose, but we care if they're not playing to win. We care if they're not giving the effort that they typically that we know that they can give. And I don't know if this was again maybe overlooking this fixture for Madrid. Maybe a lot of players just I know it's some people say you can't, players don't think of it like that, but some do. I mean, you can't sit here and think that Darwin Nunez is waking up morning against Bournemouth thinking, oh, I can't wait to play the Cherries. I'm not even thinking about Real Madrid. Who cares about the Champions League, like the biggest competition in football besides the World Cup, essentially. And it's just,
Yeah.
I think if this was a better side before Madrid, I think that we would have seen a much different performance.
And I think here's the thing. I think when you're in good form, I mean, we've had this before, even when this team was flying, where they can sometimes struggle against like lesser, let's say, opposition. And sometimes, even if the mindset is not that strong, I mean, your quality and your form is so freaking up there that makes up for it. Your lack of maybe concentration, focus. That we're not in that situation now, unless this team is really going all in. They can play good enough to be able to win, and I think that's like the frustrating thing. Every game has to be played like a freaking final, and this team just does not have that anymore, energy wise, depth wise, you name it. But yeah, just disappointing. I hate to say it, I was afraid of it. I think a lot of us were like kind of worried about this. It's like the early game.
The early game, I mean, not just this year, early games in general just never work.
That's another thing. Like, I mean, Jesus, every team plays this, and you never have an issue when, I don't know, City plays that freaking early game and stuff like that. So, I mean, I just put this back on more how we prepare for this game. And I almost feel like, and we had the same issue, right, with not conceding first and stuff. There are some glaring issues that the team has repeatedly, and it feels like there's nothing to kind of like offset them. Like this early game fiascos. I mean, there has to be something in the preparation, when we eat, when we leave, blah, blah, blah. And to be able to offset that, and it feels like obviously we're not changing anything because it's the same old, same old. I just knew it after a big result. The next game is always tough. All week the talk was like Liverpool are back and stuff, but I was optimistic because of what I heard from the post-match press conference. But I don't know, and I'm not saying like players are going out there like they're like, meh, it's Bournemouth, man, not really feeling it. But at this pro level, a 5% difference in concentration clearly can make a world of difference.
Yeah, I think the league itself, I think, is in a pretty good position from 1 to 20, where yes, you have 5 to 6, 7 weaker teams that are fighting that relegation battle, but it doesn't mean that they're miles worse than the teams in the top 7, 8 positions. I think we're seeing a league that's pretty close, balance wise. This isn't like 6 years ago where you knew that Hull City was never getting a point. They might get 8 points on the whole season, and I'm exaggerating obviously a little bit, but we had every year you kind of had a feeling that there's one or two teams that just there's no chance of anything. Whereas this year, I mean, we've seen Everton get points against Arsenal, right? We've seen Liverpool drop so many points against all the promoted sides. There's a promoted side in the top 10, right? It's one of those years I feel like there's just a lot more. I hate to use the word balance because there's still a huge imbalance of wealth and talent in the top 4 or 5, but it's not like it's so drastic as it was in the past 5, 6, 7 years, I think.
Yeah, I think probably because of like broad, there's a lot more money, and I don't know. Maybe in some ways teams
and
are
the Premier League is
spending
the
that
Super
money
League.
wiser. What was that?
And the Premier League is the Super League. People are just too afraid to admit that.
Yes, I mean it is because I mean I can't remember the number, but it was like a ridiculous ratio of number in the World Cup of players coming out of the Premier League. So it tells you everything you need to know. And I think like some teams do spend their money, are spending that money a bit more wiser. They are able to go out and get like a quality international player instead of maybe overpaying locally or just like depending on youth and stuff like that because there's much more money coming in. But either way, I mean, you look on paper and you're so much better team. I mean, you're a world-class team. You should be able to come out and you're not going to win every freaking game. But I just felt like it was flat. Like the performance again was flat. And you can tell as a fan when you watch the team how different it is. But it's just, man, it's frustrating as hell. I mean, I'm almost glad it happened first thing in the morning. So hopefully I had like forgotten about it by like noon in some ways. I went to the world of Call of Duty and just totally forgot about it. But Mind you, here's another thing. I had like a relaxing weekend when I did not even realize that the time had actually went ahead. The spring
Ugh,
forward thing had
yeah.
happened until like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock p.m. or something like that. When you don't have anywhere to be specifically, life is
You
good.
didn't notice like the oven clock or the microwave clock being an hour behind it all. That's usually the first thing for me. I walk into the kitchen, I see the time, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is so much different than what my phone was saying. What's going on?
No, because I got up so early, I was like, and I was like playing Call of Duty and stuff. And I look and I'm like, oh, it's only 10. I'm like, yeah, I guess this is what happens when you wake up early. And that was another weird thing. I didn't feel like I slept that much, but anyway, Sunday morning, and it was
Hey,
just like
power to
weird.
you, man.
Afterwards, in the evening, I was like, oh, it's only. That's when I got it. Actually, I looked in the microwave, and I was like, oh, it's only 5. I thought it was like 6 or something, and then I'm
The
like,
light
oh
bulb.
shit. And the problem is, I'm the one who told Angie on Thursday, hey, by the way, the hours are going to go forward, but I totally forgot about it by the Sunday. But hey, speaking of things that we know, well, we don't do anything about. So I saw this list come out. Let me share the screen over here. I saw this list come out over the weekends. And I'm sure, I don't know when it is, like what the dates is that it was looked at. I don't think it shows on the chart, but
The injury list.
here we go. So you look at this and somebody was like, oh, it's just unbelievable and stuff like that. Is it though? Like, is it unbelievable? Is a team really this unlucky every season? Or when you have players like, I mean, you can just put, Sparky says Arizona doesn't move time. Really? I
There's
heard another
there's
state
some
too.
places that yeah, and there's possibly some policies that will go into eliminate it all and just altogether. So we'll see how that what
It'd be nice.
happens.
I know
But
Turkey doesn't. Like they're
yeah,
like, you know what? So it just bounces back and forth the hour difference. But anyway, going back to this, I mean, is it really unlucky to have all these injuries, or when you have just Keita, Ox, and Thiago as part of your midfield going into the new season, and you can throw like probably Henderson in there too, who's always bound to miss some games with like a muscle injury and stuff like that. I mean, should we even be shocked at this? Or even should fans be like, oh, we're so unlucky? We're not unlucky every goddamn year. You just got to know it going into the season.
yeah, and I'd be really curious to see what the rate of this was over the course of the last 3-4 years. Just get a good nice average because one year could always be a weird outlier, right? Not in this case. I feel like there. I think just we've talked about it before. There must be something that's going on at the club that someone's either not listening to someone or we're just not paying attention to the right things and we're just seeing the results of it through these injuries. It I don't want to say it's unbelievable because clearly there's a pattern that's happening that we don't understand and it's just a matter of trying to understand what's going on. Every team will have their couple of guys that will consistently be hurt. But to have so many of them at the same time, it it's tough. And I don't know. We can sit here and try and talk about what the answers might be, but we might not figure it out for a while. Yeah, but looking at that, you can see. Most surprisingly, I mean, I would say Man City being so low is shocking to me compared to everyone else. But that could help. I mean, maybe Pep does like to rotate a little more than Klopp does, so they're not playing 90 minutes every single game, and he's running the guys who are often hurt are not playing all the time as well. So I guess that could be one answer there.
But I mean, here's the thing. In some ways, this should not be a sign of anything anyway. You see Villa and West Ham up top over there. You see Newcastle right by us down there. So it should not be an excuse. I guess it's my thing. See, scientists says it's unlucky, but it's a clear warning sign that FSU failed to finance effectively as for club. He failed to part ways with a set of liabilities, and that led to teams for that. I think that's more that. I mean, when I look at this, I really don't say FSG. I say club, and I say whatever we're doing. And the fact that we kind of stick with, I don't think Klopp is saying, "Hey, we got to move Ox and all these guys," and FSG is like, "Nope, we're not." because we had a chance to move Ox, and we could have probably gotten 10 or whatever for him, and then maybe played Carvalho instead this year for the minutes that Ox got, but we didn't because Klopp kind of like ties around the waist to all these guys that he has almost like over the top loyalty to these guys more than anything else. And like I said, I just consider this unlucky. It's kind of hard. One season is unlucky. I'm seen this bar chart before and again and again and again over the last 3-4 seasons, and that's just not luck. I mean, you can lose one player. We lost Van Dijk to an injury, like Gomez at one time. There are certain injuries that happens just because of the incident itself, and I get that. Like Keita's injury against United, for example, when Pogba went in on him and stuff. I understand that stuff, but all these other muscle injuries that we constantly have, playing players in meaningless games. We did it with Jota. That sparked up the numbers there. I mean, you're talking like when you use a player for almost the entire season, you're talking like 20, 30, 40 games or whatever automatically in that chart. I just feel like when we keep looking at this, it's again us not learning from mistakes, because you look at this bar chart year after year, you're like, man, what are we doing that we're always on the bottom? You can't just look at these charts and be like, we're such an unlucky team these last 5 years. I just don't get that.
Yeah, and part of it too also is the club gets in certain players, and some of these players do have injury history, and then then we have to look back and go, okay, I guess we shouldn't be too surprised, because this player has shown in the past that they have had those little niggling injuries that constantly flare up. And so, I don't know if it's like I said, I don't know what the fix is, but definitely we're past the point of unlucky. If this is a one-off, that's unlucky. If this is repeated, there's something going on.
And that's the issue. Like you said, I mean, Keita, I don't think he had as many injury issues when he was in the Bundesliga, right? But Ox did, Thiago did, the guy we loaned, Arthur did. So, I mean, you load up your midfield with the guys, with the injury history, and you have some. I mean, I guess you can call like Jones' injuries, like Curtis's injuries, maybe unlucky. He has like a weird eye thing and stuff like that. But I mean, he's another one that gets regularly injured. When that guy, in the United game slid and injured him, I was like, oh my God, here we go again. Like this poor guy just happens to be at the wrong place at the right time all the goddamn time. But so another headline. Do you have any headlines from the weekend? Anything that you saw?
I mean, like I said before we started the show, I wasn't too much into football over the weekend. I think
don't blame
it was a little tough. And I was looking at some stuff this morning, and there wasn't really much that stood out. There was the Casemiro red that we saw yesterday. Kind of unlucky. I can understand why he got the red. But then there are other tackles that have happened in the Premier League the last couple of weeks that haven't gotten red that I feel like were worse than that. So it just goes back to VAR inconsistency, and that's something that we have beaten to death. And I feel like that's not something to continue to go into. I don't know if you wanted to talk about the Richarlison and Conte situation.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because he is
that was funny. Yeah,
he is my guy. So, I mean, I'm sure everybody knows by then. Yeah, it's even Everton won this weekend, so Sparky should be happy because I know he wants to survive. I wasn't. That's a different story. So Richarlison comes out, talks smack. I really liked Conte's response, where he acted like oblivious to the criticism. He was like, yeah, he wasn't talking about me. He was just talking to himself, saying he's just having his season. It's like, that's all I heard.
I saw his interview. He didn't criticize me. He said his season was shit, and he's right. His season is not good.
And you can tell, like, that's what Conte probably said as he's watching the interview in his office.
Yep.
He was like, yeah, your season is shit.
He played it back like 7 times, kept watching, going, yep, you're right. You've been awful. Why do you think I haven't played you?
I liked how he totally ignored the part of the Richarlison's interview, though, that is about him, and just made it like he's like, yeah, he's right. He is shit. What do you make of that? Like, I guess let's start with the Richarlison thing, because this is kind of like a weird audio, because I can't stand Richarlison. He's in the top 5 for like the hated guys. But one thing that you can, and Everton knows themselves, that his efforts while he's playing, he gives you the effort, and I don't think anybody can deny that. I mean, his pressure, his press, he's into it, and that's why sometimes maybe he's unlikable because he wants to win so bad that he'll be dirty and he'll be getting your face and stuff like that. What do you make of? Do you want a player like this where he wants to win so bad that he kind of says shit?
Yes and no. I feel like it depends on where you are at as a club. I think Tottenham right now are in a very weird position. Their season's been very volatile, and I feel like Conte is on his way out. And it's sort of like a game of chicken between him and Daniel Levy, and it's like, who's going to blink first, kind of. And I don't think if this was a case where they're doing really well and they've had the same, starting 11 that's been playing really well, chemistry's great, they've been clicking all year and they're winning games consistently, and you're a player that just can't get into that starting 11, then it might not make as much sense because, like, okay, look, this team is playing really well. Like what this formula is obviously working. Maybe he doesn't want to mess with that. But with Tottenham not being they've been very hot and cold, just like Liverpool this year. And Richarlison hasn't gotten the opportunities that I feel like he at least should have gotten at this point with the little amount that he's played. And so I think in this situation, based on his playing time, where Tottenham's at and where Conte is at with the club in general, I feel like I find it fun. I would want a player to be like that, but it's all contextual based on where you're at in the season.
Here's the thing, though, to play devil's advocate, because that's what I do well. We don't see him in practice.
That's
so
true.
We see the guy who plays, and when he plays, yeah, he does go all out. He wants to win. He's gonna run. He's gonna do whatever he needs to, even being dirty or whatever on the field to win. But we don't know if that practice he is like, yeah, I'll play when the whistle blows in real game, man. Like, I'm not gonna exert that much energy here. Or maybe I know you're gonna play me because you guys didn't spend 60 million to sit me on the bench, kind of an attitude in practice. Maybe that he's getting there because we know Conte is not a manager that's going to wilt on it. He has like too much of an ego himself, kind of like a Mourinho type coach where they're going to be like my way or the highway. You think something like that is happening behind the scenes? Because why wouldn't Conte play him then? Because he's ideal for really Conte in terms of like that aggressive play.
And maybe it is, but I just can't picture why he wouldn't be playing him with how much Son has been struggling this year.
Yeah.
Kulusevski has his injury problems here and there. And so Tottenham basically goes out with 8 defenders, a midfielder, and then Kane. And you see Kane playing almost like a freaking DM every game because he has to pick up the ball in his own half to create something. And that's just been their season the entire year. And I feel like maybe it's just a bit of stubbornness on Conte's part. It could be due to the fact that maybe Richarlison doesn't put in as much effort as he'd like in training. But we saw, over the weekend, I caught a glimpse of the highlights of Richarlison's goal. It was offside, and he still got a yellow for taking his shirt off, which has happened twice now, I think, in his career. They said that 2 times he has scored.
Yeah, I should put something like, you know what, we'll take the yellow card.
Rescind the yellow.
Embarrassed yourself enough.
Yeah. And I think so. If it would have counted, it could have kind of been vindicated in his comments there. But yeah, it's just a weird situation overall, especially with Son's decline. It looks like in his quality. I feel like there's been opportunities for Richarlison to get some time, and it just hasn't.
Conte looks like that coach who would rather lose with his principles than win by, like giving in. So I think maybe that's why that's gonna say I'm on Conte's side on this side, maybe because I dislike Richarlison, even though I kind of like that. I want to be out there. I want to play. When I play, this is what happens, kind of like an attitude. Okay, that's fine and dandy. There has to be, like I say, Conte is too smart to be like, nope, still not gonna play him. His nose is too big or something. He's just gonna be fucking like. There has to be a reason. I feel like that's behind the scenes. But yeah, it's a fun story either way because the interview was funny by Richarlison, and when you watch Conte, I was literally like laughing out loud. I'm like, this dude, totally ignored it and the way he answered that question. But yeah, I'm sure there'll be more coming out of that. And I know a lot of the Spurs fans are not happy with Conte just because. So I think Richarlison gets more of the backing of the fans because we all watch the games. So the fans watch the games. So they see him putting in full effort when he's on the pitch. We don't know what happens in practice and behind the scenes. And
Right.
two, Conte is always like, I didn't even unpack my bags yet. I can go any like he always has that kind of an attitude where he's not committed or has zero loyalty. They're like, I could move right now if I wanted to and stuff. So
You want me to manage another London club? I will.
yeah.
I'll go across the street. I don't care.
Don't tempt me. Yeah. So I think that's why Richarlison gets the backing of the fans from what I've seen online more than Conte does. But it's a fun story to watch from far away because honestly, with what we got going, you need some side stories to entertain yourself. Well, here's a good one because yeah, this happened mainly on Friday and it was after the morning show, so we didn't get to this. The whole Lineker saga. So you can agree with it, you can disagree with it. I mean, obviously I agree with it, but still what he said against like the kind of like a ridiculous British policy. Britain is going back to its roots, looks like. But what do you make of it? So I guess let's start with this. What do you make of people in the sports world being involved in politics?
I think it's necessary because they are big figures. They're big talking heads. They represent a certain amount of a percentage of people. And just because you are either someone who went into football and had a very good career, or you made a lot of money doing it, and then that's kind of all you did, it doesn't mean that you're not a person of society. I hear so many times, especially when it comes to the States, about people just they should just dribble a basketball and shut up. Well, they're still citizens of this country, and the laws that happen, everything that happens in the country affects these people. Why shouldn't they get a say? And just because they have a platform where more people hear what they say doesn't mean that they're not allowed to say anything, because then you can't say that for one particular set of people and then allow it for a different set of people just because they're your everyday common folk. It just, you have to have a respect for the person that says this or the person that says this, regardless of how much money they make or what they do for work, because ultimately everyone still lives in the same place and for the most part has to abide by the same rules.
And I think, when people say, I mean, I'm all for them too. I mean, I don't care. I mean, they're human. I mean, they're people. They should be able to, they're entertainers and stuff. Like they're like a clown walking around or something in a costume. Like, no, that's the dude is doing his job. As you watch the dude do his job, if you're entertained, that's an additional bonus. I mean, you can come over here and see me work during the day. It's not going to be as entertaining, but it's all you, man. Do what are you going to do? So, I mean, that's the thing. I don't understand why they're only viewed as like entertainers. They should just do their thing, just dribble or just shoot or whatever. Yeah, they should say whatever. I mean, and he is freaking saying what's like he feels, and it's not like he said it on air or anything like that. This is his personal platform, and I understand like the legal things. I mean, Alan says the BBC is fully funded by the taxpayer, they're not a commercial entity. But then that's the thing. I mean, I wasn't as involved and obviously following British politics as closely from over here. I barely follow Turkish politics from over here, leave alone British politics. But with all the drama that BBC already has, being involved with politics and government the way it is right now, and this always happens. I mean, is there a government? There's no government channel here, is there?
Fox.
Is there one that I have not heard of or not? Is there one?
I mean,
Fox is not a government channel though. It's like
depending on who's president, right? It's either Fox or CBS. Like it's one of those, CNN. It's one of those two, right? Like
they're like speaking mods, but not official. Like like back home, there's TRT. Like so, it's like BBC. It's like a government channel, so automatically whoever is in charge puts their own people there somehow and stuff like that, and they only do broadcasts for that. And ideally, yes, they should be neutral. because the taxpayers are paying for it. But like I say, I know from Turkey, and even BBC has been like that in the past too. Not at this much, definitely not this much. But there's always like a little bit less of an anti-government thing, because obviously it's freaking like government, and not to mention it's the government kind of like squeaking their people in there in like the top layers anyway, the editors and stuff like that. So, but I mean, it's feels really bad move, a PR move, because honestly, they could have probably just let that tweet go. It's not like Lineker was gonna say anything on air. They could have had match of the day, and life would move on. I feel like they made a bigger deal of it by acting the way they did.
Yeah, and then afterwards, kind of going back and putting their tails between their legs, and all in all, just turned out to be a terrible move for the BBC in general. And like you said, they could have just let that go. They could have gone on with match of the day, and if anything had come out of it, they could take them the next week or whatever to digest and dissect and do whatever they needed to do. But yeah, it just all in all just seemed like a big miss for the BBC, which typically, I guess, because I'm thinking so the U.S. would probably C-SPAN would probably be the closest thing to kind of as government as possible with, and that's really neutral because all they do is just kind of say what happened without any sort of opinion or anything. They just
there's no like commentary, right?
Right. It's just, hey, this is what the president said. This is what the senator said, and that's it. There's not like, oh, and this is how he feels about it, kind of thing. And so, yeah, all in all, I think the BBC just kind of they reacted really quickly without kind of thinking about any sort of consequences, and we kind of saw how that played out.
I know. I feel like when the internet first kicked in, the days before the internet, Matish, you will not know this, but as internet was kicking in, the whole concept, right, was like there's going to be so much more information out there now. People are going to be so much more educated about everything. They'll like be informed about everything. I almost feel like looking back now, not only it has not changed, I almost feel like it has gotten worse. Where people are okay. Like you used to turn on a TV channel, and if you're watching Fox or CNN or whatever, you kind of got whatever they were feeding you anyway, right? And now, I mean, you just follow their accounts and do that and stuff. And like, it's not like people are like, I'll follow Fox and I'll follow CNN and I'll find this somewhere in the middle. First of all, I mean, they're so out there. It's impossible to find the middle now, like, because both of them, like whichever channel, everybody's kind of like pushing their topics all the way to one side anyway, that there's no middle left, it feels like. But also I feel like people are just following anything and everything related to that bullshit, like whatever bullshit is being pushed, and any like channels or influencers or whatever related to it. So your whole world actually has become that. And even worse now, you feel like you're more informed. I think in the past we never thought we were more informed, but now people are like, I know everything just because I follow 15 accounts that say the same thing on this side over here.
And especially with how a lot of people will get their news, unfortunately, through non-news websites as well. Specifically Facebook is one to put out there. And because of the way these apps are designed now, these apps they will just flood you with the same type of information, even if you don't follow an account. If you're looking through your feed, something pops up about something related to what you are already looking at or were looking at before. So it's always the same endless echo chamber cycle where you don't get anything from another perspective, even if it's just one simple counter argument statement, just something to think about. You're not going to get that. It's always going to be something attacking one person or attacking the other side. There's no critical thinking anymore. I think that's the problem, is that we've kind of gone so deep into this is exactly what I read and what I follow. This doesn't make me think of anything else besides what this is. This doesn't challenge me to think about anything else. This doesn't make me want to ask someone a question. This just tells me what to feel and what I should know.
But do you think that's because you're hearing it from like 10 sources now which is ultimately the same source. Whereas in the past, you heard it from one source. So you were like, if one guy told you something, you'd be like, is it true though? Like you might look into it. If 10 guys tell you something, even though they're all the same freaking gang members, you'd be like, well, I mean, they can't all be lying.
Yeah, okay, but here's the thing. I don't think as human beings, we're really that different from how we perceive things 50 years ago to how we perceive things now. If you grew up in a certain community 50 years ago and you had the same people telling you the same stuff, it would act like your social media echo chamber. You wouldn't think differently too. Like this, I don't think we're so far removed from just being so, I guess, brainwashed, for lack of a better term, to think of something as with this one specific thing. Now it's just much easier because you can sit at home and do it on your phone rather than go out and talk to the people in your local church, your local bar, whatever, who all already feel the same way and all repeat the same shit anyway. So just because they got it from one source and you got it from the same source, you're still going to say the same stuff. So whether that was 50 years ago and you talked about it, or it's today where you just see it on your screen, I think it's always been the same. It's just more magnified now, and it's more it's a lot, I guess, what's the word, not just
louder.
Yeah, in a way, right? It's just more in your face because you can't get away from it. It's always, right here, rather than, okay, I have to go out and talk to someone about it because I read this in the paper or whatever the case might be. It's just there. And I think
there are kids watching this. They're like, the paper, like
I don't see it. It's just it's blank. I don't get it.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like I have not seen a newspaper in a long time. So that's like, yeah. And I think that's what it was. Yeah, you're right. I think you could read something in the paper and talk to somebody about it. Now, yeah, it is in your face nonstop. And that's the problem, is usually the misinformation is always louder because they have an agenda to push. So they have a reason to make it louder and stuff like that. But even, I don't know, even if you see like social media comments, I don't know, let's say Gomez, right? Like we were talking about it after Gomez's last performance, and we actually shared on the Discord channel to show like, how much of assholes people are. Like some of the shit that people were putting on his Instagram account. I mean, it's all the assholes sadly posting that, like, and that a guy doesn't just show up over there and say, Gomez, I know you had a rough game, but we believe in you, man. Sticking in, stay in there or whatever. No, it's always the guys that are getting an asshole going about it. And I mean, like Alan says, there's like multiple layers to this whole ordeal because, I mean, BBC is supposed to be like Sparky says, like neutral, kind of like similar to C-SPAN, but a lot more in depth. Without like as much commentary and twists and stuff like that. And it has been really like, I mean, like I say, I don't know if it has been over the last 20 years. When I was in England, it was. I mean, and even now, it's a lot more reliable news source to watch for us in the US here,
right?
To get actual world news.
Yes.
As opposed to, like watching some of these other channels because they're like all over the place and it feels a lot more unbiased. Maybe it's because, they don't have an agenda to push. They're giving just news for the most part. So they have been there, but at the same time, like Alan says, they've been involved in a bunch of other scams now. And like I said, I don't follow British politics as well. It just was like a terrible move. It just shows that wherever you are, when it doesn't suit your needs, you just become a sports person, do your own thing. And I know like they're under contract, they're not supposed to and stuff like that. I guess the contract is only for people in like the regular news or whatever. So that's what Lineker is fighting. And it's freaking Lineker. I mean, it's odd that they would pick a battle with someone like that who's been there forever too. I mean, it's like the worst way to ruffle feathers. And I'm sure somebody up top said something to initiate all this. And it just like totally freaking like backfired. So, but yeah, it was like an interesting story to follow. It just like was odd to see this stuff kind of like from far away. I mean, but let's face it. I mean, anywhere you go, I can tell you guys this right now, as being in different countries, and then like Alan has lived in different countries as well. Every country twists their stories, even if it is the neutral one, even if they just pick which one to report over the other one, because they all have like a basic agenda to push as a country, perhaps. So you get, if you want to that's why like even stuff that happens over here, you can read the stuff here. You can read this, like listen to BBC. You can go to the Turkish stuff and read it from there, and they're all freaking different. And then you're gonna have to, and that's when you're just like, this is probably the you're trying to, and that's I don't know how effective that is too, because you're kind of like peacemaking your own story based on like the whole Richarlison thing.
Yeah.
You're kind of like peacemaking the story, and I'm saying, so you're saying, yeah, you should probably get a chance. Because I don't like Richarlison, I'm throwing out the theory that maybe he's slacking in practice, so we kind of evolve our own stories.
Yeah, that's kind of history in a nutshell. I
Yep.
mean, with the phrase "history is written by the winners" wasn't created because of some person who was really upset that they lost. It's because this is how it has been for centuries. It's just, and that's why it's very important to try and look at things from both perspectives, even if both perspectives are incredibly biased in their own ways. You at least get an understanding of why this is being said versus why this is being said. The problem is it just takes a lot longer than to want to get any information. Some people just don't. Some people just give up. Like, if I can't get honest information about this, and this side saying this all the way over here, and this side saying this all the way over here, I don't want to take all the time to read both things and then try to piece something together. I just much rather just listen to one thing and have that tell me what to think. And then I'll be happy, because I feel like that's whoever I trust to tell me this one thing, that's what I will believe, because I've done this for the last 10, 15 years. I've trusted this person, then they tell me what to think. And so I think part of it too is just I think with the accessibility of all this information, it leads to an overwhelming amount for one person to consume. If you want to get involved in something like politics, there's a lot that you have to consume, because there's just so much that's coming out every minute almost. You see all the politicians on Twitter are able to tweet all the time, and it's just like, how are you supposed to keep up with everything? It's crazy.
Yeah. And this is interesting, actually. I would like to get like Sparkies and Allens and like everywhere, especially like if you are from Liverpool or that area and like grew up in that area, like get their take. Because this weekend, I mean, as American Scouts are like on Instagram, our accounts, we follow a lot of other Liverpool accounts, and I was actually shocked to see one or two accounts almost taking the side of BBC. Because they were kind of like taking the side. I mean, let's face it, if you're taking the side of the BBC, you're not because, oh, you should be news and stuff. You probably like the policy that Lineker is speaking against, and that's why you're going against it. And I was kind of shocked to see it, and B, I mean, the second part, I guess I was not as shocked. The backlash from that, and people saying, well, time to unfollow this account and stuff, because do you kind of almost expose yourself as, because I mean, we all know, I mean, we're a sports channel, we're not a politics channel by any means. And I mean, ever since I started American Scouts, we're trying to like try to stay out of it as much as possible. But let's face it, Liverpool by nature and the city, it is a very political club. It's not like Chicago Fire or something like that. Like it is very political. It's in its history, it's in the city's history and everything like that. So it's almost impossible to separate Liverpool from politics in that sense. And I found it like shocking that there were some accounts that I'll admit, like I just unfollowed them as American Scouser as well, because clearly they're not really Liverpool values kind of accounts.
Right, just tone deaf to the situation completely. Yeah, and I'd say if you are a fan of this club, you understand that there is a big social and political standing within the club, which it's always kind of, I guess, in our American US groups on Facebook, it's kind of amazing to see sometimes some of the comments that come in there, and you think, well, don't you realize what this club stands for? Like, why do you even support this club? And it's just, usually the argument is that they separate the politics from the sport. And it's like, well, yeah, I get that if that's pickleball, but this is Liverpool, like this is part of the history. Like you said, it's been ingrained in this club. It's ingrained in the city. And the fact that some of these accounts wouldn't recognize that, it just makes you think, okay, well, are they truly supporters of the club and its history? Or are they profiting off several good years and now making an account to make some money, and that's what they really care about.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's basic. That's what it comes to. And I understand from the US perspective, like fans here are like, I don't know, you maybe started liking this team because you like the guys in Reds or you like how they play. I mean, I came over here not knowing anything about American football. And as I had a gig at college, I got to see it 6 hours a day because I used to work at the student center there with the huge screen TV where the students hung out. And I started watching it and I became a 49ers fan because the West Coast offense was the closest thing to soccer in terms of the ball moving, not running all the time and stuff. They were fun. I was like, oh, I'll start rooting for these guys. And I became a 49ers fan. Hence this. But if somebody came to me afterwards, and I almost feel like, yeah, people went in all Liverpool. They did not know anything about this stuff. Like, if I didn't know, they came afterwards. They're like, 49ers is like a really socialist club or something like that. I mean, I personally wouldn't care. I'm like, whatever. But if they were like, if they came to me like, 49ers are like a real racist organization, there you have two options. You either say, oh, fuck that, then I'm not a 49ers fan anymore. Or you kind of try to wing it and you're like, well, I separate those two things and stuff like that because you don't want to like totally back out. I feel like especially fans in the US that went into Liverpool head first and dove in the pool. And then when they came out of them, they were like, oh, wait, really? They just don't want to get out of the pool either. They were like, no, I'm just fine. And then they just keep like walking around.
They're sitting, where it goes from like 1 feet to 8 feet of water. They're sitting in that 1 feet of water where just slowly, sometimes the waves just go over your legs just a little bit, but you're not ready to leave the pool quite yet because it is 85 degrees and sunny and you're 1 day off. Yeah, I can totally understand and see that.
Yeah, but those people will come out and grab the towel and run inside when scores like this happen and it goes to like 65, 70 degrees outside. They're like, it is getting a little chill in here. Just like, get out and run. So, well, speaking of Wednesday's game, early prediction, what do you expect to see?
3-0.
Damn. Okay, that's not possible though, is it?
What do you mean that's not possible?
Well, it can't end 3-0. It will go to overtime.
It can go to penalty kicks.
Oh,
and I'm not gonna. Well, I said 3-0 Real Madrid. To be fair.
Oh. Damn it! I did not see that coming. Okay, never mind then. Shouldn't even ask.
I think this is the easiest way for me to prepare for this, and every bit of hope that we got after the United win has been crushed. So the Monday after, when I was thinking, fuck yeah, gonna beat Madrid 4-0. It's gonna be another Barcelona, has now turned into we're going to get hammered and nothing's gonna come out of it.
Yeah, Sparky says a Real 3-1. When I'm kind of going into this, I remember when the Barcelona game was kicking off, I'm like, okay, I gotta start go watch the game. I was like, we were chatting back and forth with my brother on WhatsApp, and he was like, "You guys gonna win this or blah blah blah?" And I was like, I just want us to come out and win.
I just want the guys to have fun.
Yeah, like, let the kids go out there. It was just like, make it right and win, because it just was so disappointing outplaying them and losing 3-0 over there and stuff. I never thought we would come back and win 4-0. I'll be honest. I was like, I just want to go out there. But it was one of those where there's like a famous, this is like a weird, odd Fenerbahce story, but maybe this is what happened in the Champions League final in Istanbul too. But Fenerbahce was like losing like 3-0 to Galatasaray at halftime. I remember this. I had Galatasaray fans in the student lounge begging me not to make fun of him and give him at least 24 hours to recover after this game. They were up 3-0 at halftime, and Fenerbahce stormed back and won 4-3 in the second half. And you can see because you were getting so much abuse at halftime, and then you had people begging you not to give him shit. But I feel, like the coach says, you know what? It is what it is. Whatever happened, happened. Let's go just win the second half. And then right as they're leaving, he says, but you know what? If we do score early, you never know. We could win this game too. Let's go out there, kind of a thing. Yeah. And sends them out there. And yeah, Fenerbahce scored within the first 5 minutes. So I kind of like went into the Barcelona game like that. And like, I just want us to win this one, almost like the second half. And you never know, maybe if we get an early goal, something will happen. I kind of feel the same way about this one, just not as much confidence, because that team, I mean, even without Bobby and Mo at that time, that team gave you the confidence in the overall discipline and desire they would have. I just don't have that as much with this current squad
And the
right now.
core group of guys was younger, right? Hendo was younger, Fab was younger, Van Dyke was younger, Rabo was younger, Trent was a baby still. So like they I feel like in a way they were a lot hungrier, right? Because this was coming off a loss to Real Madrid in the final before. You know, they really wanted to make it back to the Champions League. That was the thing. And I know this past year was another loss to Real Madrid, but some of these guys, they're like, okay, well, we've done this before. I mean, yeah, we want to win, but, and I'm not going to speak for the players' mentalities, but you sometimes when you get to a certain point in your career where you have won a lot of trophies and played a lot of games, sometimes it's hard to put in that extra 10% or whatever that you did a couple of years ago when you had that comeback. And I think, I mean, we saw Liverpool have 2 early goals against Madrid in the first leg of this anyway. So even if there is an early goal, I still don't feel great, like you said, because of just how it's been overall this season. Is Liverpool could go up 2-0 again and then give us all the hope in the world, and then Real come back and
that will be very Liverpool, actually.
Yeah, go up 2-0 at halftime and then lose 9-2 on aggregate, right?
Yeah, that would be sadly very Liverpool right now. You never, because I mean, especially if they're 2 up, you know, we're going to be going all in and going to be exposed to the counter and stuff like that. You're right about that, though. I mean, we talked about that. I can't remember if it was with Rami or Alex on one of the morning shows last week about PSG. And, you know, you can bring in these guys. Yeah, I've been there, done that, like the Ramos and Messi and stuff like that. But you do lose some of that hunger. Yeah, you get the experience, but you do lose some of the hunger when players are walking off the pitch after a loss like that. A guy like that who's been there, done that, and won it a bunch of times leaves like, this shit happens too. You know, you win some, you lose some. What are you gonna do? Whereas the guy who has not won and really going for it takes it a lot harder and wants to come back and win and stuff. So I hear you there. But holy cow, this has been a long morning show, but a lot of, and you know, you said before we got on air, there weren't a lot of headlines.
This happened last time. We didn't have many headlines. We make a meal out of the few that we have, you know?
I mean, to be fair, like Sparky brought out that BBC story,
Yep.
and that's like one with like multi-layers, and anything with Richarlison and Conte is fun. But at least we got to avoid talking about the Bournemouth game as much as possible, which now I highly doubt we'll be able to avoid on tonight's podcast. I will be making my best to make that appearance as well. Layla's season is starting. So we'll be at her game. So hopefully I'll be able to get there in time. But if not, definitely Gally and Bickler are going to be there. And they'll be back to their grumpy selves, I would think. But we'll see more then. See you guys then. And then Wednesday morning, we will be back again. I will be back with the morning show with our very own Egyptian king. Chataholics, Alan says. Hey, it's Monday morning, man. It's better than talking about the Bournemouth game. Anything but the Bournemouth game.
I will say one quick thing about the Bournemouth game. It was great to see David Brooks at least back on the bench.
Oh, yes.
So if anything, if there's any takeaway from that match on Saturday, it's just great to see him back in the squad. And that's all I will say about that game.
Yeah, that's enough said. I'm sure we'll go through and talk a lot about it tonight. Or we can just play like an episode from like 3 weeks ago when the same thing happened, where we had a couple of good results and went back to where we were. So we'll see which one is easier. But have a great Monday, everybody. I know it's Monday, but let's start off the week right. It could be a huge week for the Reds. I'm just freaking kidding. You never know what's going to happen. It's the box of chocolates thing going this season. But it is what it is. The good news is it's already March. So let's go with that. Have a great day and see you guys tonight. Take care.